12 years of marriage. I truly believed we were unshakable. Sure, we had our ups and downs. No relationship is flawless. But I always thought Emily and I shared an unspoken rule: loyalty above all. We met back in university, and things between us escalated quickly. Emily was the kind of woman who commanded every room she entered. Magnetic, witty, full of light. I felt deeply for her, and for the longest time, I was convinced she felt the same. But something shifted recently. It started as a faint whisper in the back of my mind, something I tried to dismiss, but couldn't. Emily grew distant, like she was constantly holding her breath when she was near me. She started leaving the house more often, work events, or girls' nights, even though she had never been much of a social butterfly before. And then there was the phone, always in her hand, buzzing nonstop. Each time it lit up, she would smirk or quietly chuckle before angling the screen away from me. The real warning sign came one evening last week. After dinner, she asked me to sit down. Her face carried a mix of guilt and arrogance. "I need to tell you something," she said, unnervingly calm. "What is it?" I asked, already uneasy. "I've been feeling restless," she admitted. "Our life is too predictable. I want something exciting, something new." I blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "I'm going on a date," she said bluntly, like she was telling me she was going to the store. "It's just for the experience. Don't worry, I'll make it up to you." I stared at her, a knot forming in my stomach. "You're joking," I said, laughing nervously, hoping it was some strange prank. Her face remained stone. "I'm serious. This isn't about you, Mark. It's about me. I need this." "You need this? Emily, you're my wife. What about our vows? Our family?" My voice rose despite my attempts to stay composed. She shrugged, indifferent. "Look, I'll come back and we'll move on. You're overreacting." Overreacting? Her words stunned me into silence. After everything we had built, the sacrifices, the nights spent holding each other through difficult times, she was throwing it all away for a cheap thrill. "I'm warning you," I said quietly. "You're making a huge mistake." But she only smirked and brushed past me like I was an obstacle in her way. "I'll be fine," she said, walking out of the room without a glance back. As I sat alone in the silence of our living room, a storm churned inside me. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. But beneath it all was determination. If she wanted a thrill, if she wanted to see how far she could push me, then fine. Actions have consequences, and I wasn't about to let her trample over my life without a fight. That night, I started preparing. She wasn't going to rewrite our story on her terms. The next chapter would be mine. The morning after Emily's bombshell, I woke up early. My body was exhausted, but sleep was impossible. She hadn't come home. The empty space beside me in bed was a sharp reminder of the betrayal festering beneath the surface of our marriage. I couldn't stop replaying her words in my head. "I'll make it up to you later," as if my trust, dignity, and 12 years together could be patched up with a casual apology. I tried to go through my usual morning routine, coffee, dishes, cleaning, but everything felt foreign. The walls that once felt like a sanctuary now seemed to close in on me. Then my phone buzzed. For a fleeting moment, I hoped it was Emily, maybe apologizing, maybe realizing how absurd this all was. But it wasn't. It was my brother, Daniel. "You good?" he asked when I answered. "You sound off." I hesitated. Should I tell him everything? Daniel was protective, sometimes too much, and I knew this would light a fire under him. But I needed someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't sugarcoat things. "Emily told me she's going on a date," I blurted out, my voice cracking. There was silence. Then, "She what?" "She says she wants something thrilling, something new, like she's auditioning for some reality show," I muttered bitterly. "Are you serious?" And you let her? What was I supposed to do? Lock her in the house? I snapped, angry at both him and myself. She didn't ask for permission. She announced it. Daniel sighed. So what's the plan? Because you can't just sit there and let her walk all over you. I'm not, I said firmly, though I had no real plan yet. I'm going to find out exactly what she's doing. She wants to treat this like a game? Fine. I'll play. Just don't do anything stupid, he said. Call me if you need backup. After we hung up, I started forming a plan. I wasn't going to confront Emily yet. If she was lying, I needed proof. The first step, follow the money. That afternoon, I combed through our joint bank account and credit card statements. Nothing screamed affair, but a few charges stood out. Dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of, a pricey boutique, a spa visit. Emily had always been careful with money, so this was unusual. Next, her phone. That evening, when she came home late, face flushed, demeanor smug, I casually asked, "Had a nice time?" "Wonderful," she replied with a smirk. "You should try being less uptight, Mark. It's liberating." I forced a tight smile. Good to know. Later, while she showered, I quickly checked her phone. Most messages were harmless, coworkers, group chats. But one name stood out, Ryan. I didn't recognize it, and their texts were vague, mostly confirming plans. By the time she emerged from the bathroom, the phone was back in place. My heart pounded, not from fear of getting caught, but from the confirmation that something was definitely wrong. 2 days later, she said she was going out again. Just with friends. But this time, I followed her. Keeping a safe distance, I tailed her car across the city until she parked outside a trendy restaurant. I parked a few spaces away and watched. My stomach twisted when I saw him, tall, sharply dressed, waiting near the entrance. Emily greeted him with a smile I hadn't seen in years, touching his arm as they walked inside together. I sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. This was the proof I needed. But instead of confronting her, I drove home. When she walked in that night, humming and smelling of wine, I said nothing. I just watched her, my resolve hardening. She thought she could play me. She thought I'd roll over. She had no idea what was coming. That night, I started documenting everything. If she wanted to destroy our marriage, I'd make sure she owned every piece of the wreckage. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Her smirks, her dismissive tone, all of it became fuel. She had declared herself the player. I was going to make her the pawn. Step 1. Gather more information. I called Daniel and told him what I'd seen. She met him at a restaurant, I said, pacing the living room. I need to know who this Ryan guy is. I might know someone who can help, Daniel replied. Remember Luke, the private investigator I told you about? He's discreet and fast. I hesitated. Hiring a PI felt extreme, but Emily had gone there already. All right, I said. Get me his number. Within hours, I was sitting in Luke's office, dimly lit, lined with framed photos and certificates. He looked like a retired cop, with sharp eyes that studied me the second I walked in. All right, Mark, he said, leaning back in his chair. Tell me everything. I laid it all out. Emily's behavior, the suspicious spending, the man at the restaurant. Luke listened without interruption, jotting notes. When I finished, he nodded. Classic case, he said. We'll get to the bottom of it. Do you have access to her phone or social accounts? Some, I admitted. But she's careful. No problem. Give me her number and any profiles you have. I'll handle the rest. Give me a week. Luke didn't need a full week. 3 days later he called, voice clipped and direct. I've got something you'll want to see. Can you come by? My stomach knotted as I drove to his office in Greyport's old warehouse district, a place that always smelled faintly of machine oil and salt air from the harbor. Luke slid a manila folder across the desk the moment I sat down. Inside were high-resolution photos. Emily and the man I'd seen at the restaurant, Ryan, walking into the Harborview Hotel arm in arm. Another shot showed them in a dim bar, her hand resting on his thigh, laughter frozen mid-frame. The last series was the most damning, the two of them disappearing into an elevator just before midnight and reappearing after 2 a.m., rumpled and grinning. Luke also provided a summary of phone metadata call durations, timestamps, and a pattern of late-night texts, along with a printed list of transactions tied to a prepaid card I hadn't known existed. "She's been careful," Luke said, "but not that careful. The prepaid is topped up from your joint account through a small transfer that's then cash withdrawn and loaded. Harder to notice, but not invisible." I stared at the evidence until the white margins of the paper blurred. "So it's real," I said. It came out flat, like a line from a play I'd rehearsed too many times. "It's real," Luke confirmed quietly. "I'm sorry." I drove home by the long route along the bay, let the cold wind through the cracked window sting my face awake. Logic told me to be calm, methodical. Emotion told me to walk in and demand answers. In the end, I did neither. I made dinner for myself, left a plate covered for her, and sat at the kitchen table, indexing the photos and notes. If she wanted to rewrite us, I was going to keep the original draft chapter and verse. Emily came in late, humming a tune from the radio and smelling like citrus and wine. She tossed her purse down and leaned against the counter like a cat basking in a patch of sun. "You're up," she said, surprised but not alarmed. "Long day?" I asked. "Exhausting," she replied, as if she'd been moving mountains rather than sneaking around them. I looked at her in the reflected window, the overlay of her face on the dark yard outside, and felt something freeze into place in me. Not rage, exactly. Resolution. 2 nights later, she announced she was meeting friends and left in a tailored jacket I'd never seen before. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Luke texted me 2 hours later. Harborview again. Same companion. Photos captured. I replied with a single word, "Thanks," and kept working. By morning, I had a plan. I called Daniel. "I'm going to find out everything about this guy," I said. "Where he works, what he wants, how long this has been going on." "Then what?" my brother asked. "Then I decide what to do with it." He was silent for a beat. "I'm with you, whatever you need." That afternoon, I combed through our savings and found the leakage Luke had hinted at: small, irregular transfers, always just shy of notice trigger thresholds at the bank. Then I found the boutique charges Rook and Stone on Fairhaven Street and a day spa in Old Mill Row. Not in Emily's usual rotation. The pattern said new habits for a new life. When she got home, I kept my voice even. "How was girls' night?" She smirked without bothering to hide it. Liberating. "Good," I said, because anything else would have been wasted air. That weekend, Luke sent a short dossier on Ryan. Ryan Colton, 38. Project manager at a logistics firm across the river in West Meridian. Married until last spring, separated now. Lease on an apartment near the stadium. No criminal record. Known bar, the Black Lantern on 9th. Known gym, Forge and Fleet. A perfectly normal man on paper, the kind you could introduce to your parents. The kind you could convince yourself was better for you than the husband who knew your worst fears and loved you anyway. I made one more decision. I was getting a lawyer. Not because I wanted war, but because refusing to plan for one would be an invitation to lose. I booked a consultation with a family attorney a colleague had recommended, Ava Chen, all crisp lines and calm eyes. She listened to everything without interrupting, the folder open between us. When I finished, she laced her fingers together. "You have strong evidence already," she said. "But we should think strategically. Don't confront her with all of this yet. Let patterns continue until we have enough to make temporary orders easy. Temporary orders? For the house. For the kids, if it comes to that. For financial restraint. We'll file when you're ready. Meanwhile, lock down your digital life, back up what matters, and don't give her any reason to paint you as unstable. What about the joint accounts? I asked. Ava nodded. You can freeze transfers above a threshold and require dual signatures for unusual withdrawals. Also start a contemporaneous log. Dates, times, statements, any deviation from parenting routines. Judges like logs. I left her office with a list. Change passwords, 2-factor authentication on everything, duplicate the hard drive, photograph valuables, scan the safe documents, and most difficult, keep my voice level at home. That night, Emily breezed in late again, eyes bright, hair in a new style. Don't wait up next time, she said. You look tired. I'll keep that in mind, I replied. The next afternoon, Luke called. We got messages, he said. Legal, above board. He's careless with his cloud backups. My mouth went dry. Messages? I'll forward a sanitized set. You'll get the picture. He paused. You sure you want to read them? Yes, I said, and my voice didn't shake. They were worse than photographs, brief exchanges thick with implication. Can't stop thinking about Friday. Next time, no distractions. You make me feel alive. Plans pinned to calendars, a hotel codename Lantern Nights, and a string of inside jokes that had grown like ivy around them. There was no way to pretend this was a misunderstanding. It was a garden carefully tended. I printed 4 pages and put the rest in the encrypted folder. That evening, she came home early. We ate in the same room for the first time in weeks. I waited until she poured a second glass of wine. Who's Ryan? I asked softly. Her glass paused mid-air. What? Ryan, I repeated, meeting her eyes. Who is he? A laugh, too loud. Are you snooping now? God, Mark, that's pathetic. Explain the harbor view, I said. Explain the texts. Panic flickered across her face and vanished beneath ice. You're delusional. This is exactly why I needed space. You turn everything into a crime. Don't, I said, my voice dropping because if it rose, I'd break. Don't try to make me your villain to excuse what you chose. For a second, she looked like she might apologize. Then the shutters slammed. Maybe if you'd been paying attention to me, she said, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. It hit like a punch, even though I'd braced for it. I stepped back, nodded once, and ended the conversation. Pack a bag, I said quietly. Go stay with your friend. I'm not leaving, she snapped. This is my house too. Noted, I said. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't raise my voice. I took the folder to the office and wrote a log entry instead. Sleep was useless after that. I sat in the living room with the desk lamp on low, checked the window locks, and drafted emails. In the morning, I called Daniel. Can you take the kids tonight? I asked. Say when, he said. That afternoon, I met Luke again to tie off loose ends. He'd found smaller things receipts, a rideshare history linked to the prepaid card, a pattern of Thursday nights. People think they're invisible after 10 p.m., he said. They're not. From there, I went straight to Ava. We reviewed everything. We file for temporary financial restraints and possession of the residence, she said. And if needed, a temporary custody schedule that stabilizes the kids' routine. I'm not suggesting you blow it up today, but I want you ready. I was ready. That evening, while Emily was out, I set new rules where I legally could. I called the bank and put alerts on the joint accounts and a freeze on large transfers. I added smart locks that would notify me of entries. I gathered passports and birth certificates in a fireproof envelope and left it with Daniel. I took photographs of the homerooms as they were, valuables in placetime stamped and uploaded. When Emily returned close to midnight, She fumbled at the door and then pounded, confused. I opened it and stood aside. "New locks," I said. "You'll get a code. House rules from now on. We talk before late nights. We plan parenting time. We stop lying." She laughed, but there was a thread of uncertainty in it. "Who do you think you are?" "Someone who's done being walked on." She stomped past me to the kitchen. "You're overreacting. Again." I said nothing, because my words weren't for her anymore. They were for the judge who might someday read my log. The next morning, the fallout began. My phone buzzed with a call from my manager, Thomas. "Everything okay?" he asked, careful. "There's chatter online, your name came up." I knew before I looked what I'd find. Emily had posted a long status heavy on vague accusations, light on facts about an emotionally controlling spouse, and finding herself. There was a photo of her red-eyed, taken from a flattering angle. The comments were a mess, half sympathy, half side-eye. She wanted the narrative. She always had. I didn't respond publicly. I forwarded screenshots to Ava. "This helps us," Ava said, cool as a surgeon. "It demonstrates a public campaign to damage you. Don't engage. Keep logging." By lunch, Daniel texted, "You okay?" I sent a thumbs up and kept moving. Work needed doing. Kids needed dinner. My life wouldn't pause just because she wanted applause. That evening, a message popped up from someone unexpected. "Hi, it's Mara." I stared at the name. Mara was Emily's closest friend, the kind who knew birthdays, allergies, and the best bakery for custom cakes. We'd never been close, but we'd always been cordial. Her message continued. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize how bad it was. If you need to see something, I have screenshots." She's been bragging in our chat. A second message followed with images. Emily confessing the affair, mocking me, talking about how she'd win the narrative and teach Mark a lesson about control. I forwarded them to Ava. "This is gold," she wrote back. "Preserve originals. Ask Mara to export with metadata if possible." That same night, Emily showed up simmering. She pounded on the door until I opened it on the chain. "You're freezing the accounts? Changing locks? What kind of father does that to the mother of his children?" "A father who's done being lied to," I said. "You don't get to injure me and call it love." Her eyes flashed. "You're weak, Mark. A real man would fight for his family." I almost laughed. "You mean lie down while you burn it?" I closed the door, gently but firmly. "We're done here." The days that followed were a balancing act between quiet normalcy and measured preparation. I took the kids to school, made lunches, answered work emails, and saved every relevant thing to the secure drive. When the kids asked simple questions, "Why is Mommy at Aunt Naomi's?" I gave simple answers. Sometimes grown-ups don't make good choices, but you're safe. You're loved. It felt like walking a tightrope over a canyon with them on my shoulders. Emily didn't fade. She sharpened. She posted another narrative, then messaged friends in common, then tried to show up at the kids' weekend soccer game, breezy smile plastered on, perfume a little too sweet for the chilly morning. Our son ran to her, confused but eager. Our daughter hung back, wary. I stepped between them in the tension, keeping my voice low. "You know the schedule," I said. "Don't make the kids choose in the parking lot." A friend of mine, Mateo, drifted over, just a presence, a witness. Emily's smile hardened. "I can stand on grass like anyone," she said. "And you can also cause a scene," I replied. "But not today." She stayed. She watched from the bleachers. After the game, she tried to peel them off toward her car. I said no. She hissed a promise I'd heard before. "You can't keep me from them." I nodded once. "Follow the order, and you won't be kept from anything." She left in a cloud of perfume and pride. On Monday, Ava called. "Heads up," she said. Her attorney filed for an emergency hearing alleging parental alienation. I let out a breath. Of course they did. It won't stick, Ava said. But it will cost time. We'll counter with your logs, the social posts, the third-party messages, and the PI report. Also, there's a claim of financial control. We'll show the prepaid card and the hotel trail. Judges don't love those. I spent that evening assembling a binder. Tabs for bank statements, tabs for Luke's reports, tabs for screenshots, tabs for a calendar that showed Emily's disappearances and the kids' missed routines. It was excruciating and somehow clarifying. This was not a fog anymore. It was a file. 2 days later, the doorbell rang after dark. I checked the camera. Mara stood on the porch, clutching an envelope, rain freckling her coat. I know it's late, she said when I opened the door. But you should have this. Inside were printed exports from the group chat, complete with timestamps and metadata. There was more. Messages between Emily and the other man Ryan forwarded by his soon-to-be ex, who had apparently had her own breaking point. In them, Emily wasn't just cheating. She was strategizing about court, about social perception, about what to say to the kids to make me look cold. I didn't sign up for this, Mara said, eyes shiny with disgust and grief. I tried to be a friend. This is not friendship. Thank you, I said, because there weren't better words. The emergency hearing came fast, too fast for comfort, slow enough for me to feel every second. The courtroom in West Meridian smelled like paper and disinfectant. Emily wore a black sheath dress and a mask of control. Her attorney radiated polished indignation. Ava was quiet steel at my side. They spoke first about a husband who isolated a vibrant woman, about a rigid household, about a man who weaponized logistics. It was theater. Ava let it breathe just long enough to show its seams. Then she stood, slid our binder onto the evidence cart, and began. We started with the calm center. The kids' routines restored, school drop-off logs, coaching notes from the soccer league, teachers' emails thanking me for consistent pickups. Then Ava introduced the money prepaid reload patterns, boutique sprees alien to household budgets. Then the digital trail, the posts that smeared me, the group chat where Emily bragged about controlling the story, the PI report that placed her at the Harbor View on a schedule that neatly overlapped with nights she'd claimed to be at team dinners. Finally, Ava laid down the messages between Emily and Ryan, redacted with care but unmistakable in meaning. Plans, code names, jokes that only make sense when you've decided your vows are flexible. There was a murmur in the gallery. The judge's face didn't move, but her pen stopped for the first time. Emily's attorney objected. Ava cited foundation, chain of custody, and the business records exception like she was reading a children's book. The judge allowed it. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't perform. I talked about breakfasts and homework, and how you learn to read your kid's face when they're trying to be brave. I didn't call Emily names. I didn't recount every wound. I said, they need stability. I can give them that. Emily testified last. She tried to cry. She tried to smirk. She tried to be the ingenue and the avenger within the span of 15 minutes. The judge asked calm, surgical questions. Emily's answers contradicted themselves just enough to matter. When we finished, the judge called a brief recess. I stared at the grain of the wooden table and breathed. Daniel texted a 3-word spell. Whatever happens, proud. The judge returned with a short ruling. Temporary orders will remain in place, she said. Primary possession with Mr. Hale. Mrs. Hale's visitation to follow the supervised schedule, already agreed. Financial restraints to prevent dissipation of assets. Both parties are admonished to refrain from posting about this matter on social media. Emily's jaw clicked. Her attorney leaned in and whispered a flame into her ear. Ava thanked the court, gathered our binder, and tapped twice on the table her version of a victory dance. Outside, in the pale winter sun, Emily caught up to me in the parking lot. You think you've won, she said, smiling without warmth. "You've only slowed me down." "I'm not racing you," I said. "I'm raising our kids." For once, she had no comeback worth delivering. The week after the hearing felt like stepping out of a storm cellar and finding the house still standing. The kids laughed more. The clatter in the kitchen sounded like home again. I cooked simple things and didn't burn them. I learned where our daughter hides her favorite markers and how our son likes his bedtime stories when he's too proud to admit he wants one. Emily tested the boundaries, texted Barbs, posted subtweets until her lawyer told her to stop, accidentally showed up 5 minutes early to pickups and tried to stretch those minutes into arguments. I didn't bite. I documented. Then at 10:42 on a gray Thursday, Ava called. "Heads up," she said. "They've filed an appeal for full custody." I closed my eyes, felt the old nausea try to surge and let it pass. "On what basis?" "Parental alienation primarily," Ava said. "It's flimsy, but it's a tactic. They want you exhausted. We'll respond with a timeline, the third-party confirmations, the stabilized routines, and if she insists, more of the digital record." That evening, while I was helping our son divide fractions at the dining table, there was a knock. I opened the door to find another unexpected ally, Danielle Ryan's ex. She held a folder, jaw tight. "He finally sent me everything," she said. "I'm done protecting his mess, and I'm definitely done covering for hers." Inside were message exports that combined with what we had to paint a complete picture. Planning meetings, sneering at court optics, and worse notes on what to say to our kids to make me look cold. "Thank you," I said. It felt inadequate, and absolutely right. Ava built our response like a fortress. When the appeal hearing came, Emily wore defiance like armor. It dented quickly. Ava walked the judge through calendars, messages, bank trails, and the sudden blossoming of integrity whenever a witness was present. Danielle testified in a voice that could sand wood. Emily's attorney objected often and lost more than he won. The judge denied the appeal, maintained the supervised schedule, and cherry on top ordered Emily to contribute to my legal fees for filing a baseless claim. Outside the courthouse, she hissed, "You'll regret this." "I regret trusting you with my future," I said. "I don't regret protecting theirs." The air that followed wasn't silence so much as space. Emily retreated to whatever orbit she could maintain. Our home settled into gentle routines, pancakes on Saturdays, muddy cleats near the back door, a puzzle we never finished but loved starting. Some nights, I'd sit on the porch steps after the kids were asleep and watch the sky over Grayport turn bruise purple, then clean as a steel edge. "Dad?" my eldest asked one evening, sitting beside me with a cup of cocoa. "It feels better now." "It does," I said, ruffling his hair. "And it's going to keep feeling better." Looking back, I realized the betrayal hadn't broken me. It had revealed me what I could carry, what I would never carry again, and how fiercely I'd guard the two people who mattered most. Life wasn't perfect. It was honest. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The weeks after the failed custody appeal felt like a strange kind of calm. The eye of a storm I knew wasn't over. Emily wasn't one to accept defeat gracefully, and I suspected her next move was already brewing. Still, for the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. The house no longer felt like enemy territory. The kids were laughing more, sleeping better, asking fewer anxious questions. Even I started to feel lighter, cooking proper meals, reading again at night, going for runs by the river without checking my phone every 5 minutes. But peace, when it comes from someone like Emily, is usually just preparation for the next strike. It started subtly, a string of texts, half passive-aggressive, half manipulative. "You've turned them against me," one read. "They'll hate you when they grow up," said another. "You'll regret taking everything from me." I forwarded each one to Ava. Her response was the same every time. "Document. Don't engage." Then came the unexpected, a call from Danielle, Ryan's ex-wife. "Mark, I thought you should know something," she said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the disgust simmering underneath. "Emily's been reaching out to Ryan again." "Again? Why?" "She's desperate. She's trying to convince him that you've ruined her life, that he owes her something. He's not responding, but I figured you should be aware." I thanked her and hung up, but my mind was racing. It didn't surprise me that Emily was trying to rewrite the narrative. She always needed someone to blame, someone to manipulate. But the fact that she was still trying to involve Ryan, even after everything, told me one thing clearly. She wasn't done. Her next move came that weekend. It was a Saturday morning, bright, chilly, perfect soccer weather. The kids had a match, and I was standing on the sidelines with a coffee, cheering them on when I saw her. Emily. She was standing just beyond the field's chain-link fence, wearing oversized sunglasses and a carefully constructed smile. The kids noticed her immediately. Our youngest waved excitedly, but our oldest hesitated, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. "Mommy's here," the little one shouted, running toward her. I felt my chest tighten. I took a deep breath, forcing my expression into something neutral as I walked over. "Emily," I said evenly, "you're not supposed to be here. You know the visitation agreement." "I'm just watching my kids play soccer," she said sweetly, though her eyes burned with defiance. "That's not a crime, is it?" Before I could respond, my friend Alex, another parent from the team, stepped up beside me. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his voice polite but firm. "Everything's fine," Emily said quickly, her fake smile wavering for a split second. "Just a misunderstanding." "Good," Alex replied. "Let's keep it that way." I guided the kids back to the field, doing my best to shield them from the tension. Emily stayed for the rest of the game, standing apart but making sure we knew she was there. And when the match ended, she tried to approach us again. "Emily," I said quietly but firmly, "you need to leave." Her eyes narrowed. "You can't keep me from them forever." "I'm not," I replied, "but you will follow the court order. Otherwise, you won't see them at all." She glared at me for a long moment before finally turning and walking away, her heels clicking angrily against the pavement. I watched her go, a mix of frustration and grim satisfaction washing over me. She was testing boundaries, but I wasn't going to let her find any cracks. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, my youngest looked up at me with wide, earnest eyes. "Why doesn't Mommy live with us anymore?" The question punched the air out of me. I sat on the edge of the bed and took a steadying breath. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "grown-ups don't get along. But no matter what, Mommy and I both love you very much. That will never change." He nodded, seemingly content with the answer. But as I turned off the light and closed the door, a wave of sadness washed over me. Emily's choices had forced me into a role I never expected, father and mother, protector and nurturer, all at once. It was exhausting, but it was worth it if it meant giving my kids the stability they deserved. Of course, Emily wasn't finished. The following week, she escalated. She posted another long, dramatic rant on social media, accusing me of parental alienation and claiming I was manipulating the children to hate her. Friends and acquaintances reached out, some offering sympathy, others asking if any of it was true. I ignored them and sent the post straight to Ava. "She's digging her own grave," Ava said when we met later that week. "Every public outburst like this makes her look more erratic if she tries to reopen custody again." Despite her reassurance, the constant tension was wearing me down. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced myself for another storm. Still, I reminded myself why I was doing this. For my children, for our peace, for the life I wanted to build without her chaos. And for the first time, I felt like I was winning. Then, just when things seemed to stabilize, Emily launched her boldest attack yet. It started with a phone call from Ava early on a rainy Monday morning. "Mark," she said, her voice sharper than usual. I just received notice that Emily has filed for full custody. What? I nearly dropped my coffee. She doesn't have a case. She doesn't, Ava agreed. But this isn't about winning. It's about draining you, emotionally, financially, mentally. She's hoping you'll cave under the pressure. What's her argument this time? I asked, already feeling the frustration bubbling inside me. She's claiming parental alienation. Ava sighed. She says you're turning the children against her. It's flimsy, but we'll need to prepare thoroughly. I spent the next few days gathering every piece of evidence I could. Text messages, call logs, emails, screenshots, teacher statements. Anything that demonstrated her instability and disregard for the children's well-being. Then something unexpected happened. One evening, as I was helping my youngest with his homework, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Danielle was standing on my porch again, this time with a folder in her hands. I thought you should see this, she said, stepping inside. Inside the folder were screenshots of messages between Emily and Ryan, plans for secret meetings, bitter rants about me, and, worst of all, conversations about how to manipulate the court system. She's trying to pull Ryan back into her mess, Danielle explained, disgust clear in her voice. But he's finally seeing through her. He sent me these and told me to do whatever I wanted with them. I stared at the evidence, stunned. This changes everything. Good, Danielle said, a small, grim smile playing on her lips. Take her down. With this new evidence in hand, Ava and I built an airtight case. The custody hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. And though the thought of stepping back into that courtroom made my stomach churn, I was ready. The day of the hearing arrived quickly. Emily showed up with her expensive lawyer and her usual air of false confidence. She even shot me a smug little smile, as if she'd already won. But the longer the hearing went on, the more that confidence crumbled. Ava presented everything. Emily's repeated violations of visitation rules, her manipulative social media posts, her erratic behavior, and now, the damning messages from Ryan. Each new piece of evidence chipped away at her credibility. And when Danielle took the stand and testified about Emily's schemes, the courtroom fell silent. When it was Emily's turn to speak, she did what she always did, played the victim. She painted me as controlling, bitter, unreasonable. But against the mountain of evidence, her words were hollow. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. Emily's appeal was denied. Her visitation would remain supervised. And, in a final blow, she was ordered to pay a portion of my legal fees for filing a baseless claim. Outside the courthouse, Emily spun around to face me, rage twisting her features. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "I regret trusting you for so long, but I'll never regret protecting my kids." For the first time in years, the days that followed were truly peaceful. Emily's defeat seemed to break something in her, and she finally retreated from our lives. The kids and I settled into a new rhythm. There was laughter, warmth, and a sense of safety that had been missing for far too long. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the rooftops, my oldest joined me. "Dad," he said quietly, "things feel better now." "They do," I agreed, ruffling his hair. "And they're only going to get better." Looking back, I realized that Emily's betrayal, as devastating as it was, had taught me more about strength than I ever imagined. It had shown me the value of standing up for what matters most, even when the odds are stacked against you. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was ours. And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough. The first few weeks after the final court decision were almost surreal. Life in the house took on a kind of peaceful rhythm I hadn't felt in over a decade. The kids woke up laughing again. The silence at breakfast wasn't heavy anymore, and even the smallest things, like the smell of pancakes on Saturday mornings or the sound of their footsteps racing down the hallway, felt like tiny victories. We built routines that were ours, and ours alone. School drop-offs, evening walks by the river, movie nights on Fridays where the kids would fall asleep halfway through a film, leaving me smiling at their soft breathing. It felt like we were finally healing. But I knew better than to think Emily was gone for good. Her silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like strategy. And I was right. It started with the texts again. Short, sharp jabs designed to unsettle me. You've poisoned them against me. They'll see the truth someday. You stole my life. You'll pay for it. Each one more desperate than the last. I didn't respond. I simply forwarded them to Ava, who reminded me that this was classic post-divorce manipulation, emotional bait to pull me back into a fight. Then she started showing up places. Grocery stores, the kids' school parking lot. Once, even outside my office, leaning casually against her car like she just happened to be there. I reported every incident, every sighting. Ava documented them all. Then one afternoon I got a call from Danielle again. "Mark, I think you should know something," she said. "Emily's been contacting Ryan again." "Still?" I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. What could she possibly want now? "She's telling him you've turned the kids against her, that you're ruining her life, that she needs him." Danielle paused. He's not responding, but she's not letting go. It was pathetic, desperate, predictable. But it also told me something important. Emily was losing control, and people like her don't handle that well. The next escalation came at the kids' soccer game the following weekend. She wasn't supposed to be there. The visitation schedule was clear, but there she was again, hovering near the edge of the field with that same artificial smile. The kids spotted her instantly. My youngest's face lit up, but my oldest froze, conflicted. "Mommy's here!" the little one shouted, already running. I followed, keeping my tone steady. "Emily, you're not supposed to be here," I said quietly. "I'm just watching my kids," she said sweetly, but her eyes were cold. "That's not illegal, is it?" Before I could respond, one of the other parents, my friend Alex, walked over. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's fine," Emily said, her smile faltering just slightly. "Good," Alex said. "Let's keep it that way." She stayed for the rest of the match, standing at a distance. But when it was over, she tried to follow us to the car. "Emily, you need to leave," I said firmly. "You can't keep them from me forever," she hissed. "I'm not," I replied calmly. "But if you break the rules again, you won't see them at all." Her glare could have melted steel, but she turned and stalked away. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, my youngest looked at me with wide, questioning eyes. "Why doesn't Mommy live here anymore?" I felt my throat tighten. I sat beside him and stroked his hair gently. "Sometimes grown-ups stop getting along," I said. "But Mommy and I both love you very much. That will never change." He nodded, seemingly content with the answer. But as I turned off the light, I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me. Emily's choices had turned me into something I never expected to be, both mother and father, protector and provider. It was exhausting, but it was worth it. Of course, she wasn't finished. A few days later, she posted a long, emotional rant on social media, accusing me of alienating the kids and brainwashing them against her. It was filled with half-truths, outright lies, and dramatic flourishes about being a broken mother. Friends reached out, some with sympathy, others asking questions. I ignored them and sent screenshots to Ava. "She's digging her own grave," Ava said, unfazed. "Every one of these posts is another piece of evidence. The more erratic she looks, the stronger our position becomes." Even so, the constant drama wore me down. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced myself. Still, I kept reminding myself, this wasn't about me anymore. It was about my kids, about their safety, their peace, their chance at a normal life. And then Emily made her most reckless move yet. Ava called me early one morning, her tone serious. "Mark, I just received notice. Emily has filed another motion. She's demanding full custody." I nearly dropped my coffee. "Full custody? On what grounds?" "Parental alienation," Ava said. "She's claiming you're deliberately turning the children against her. It's weak, but it's a tactic. She's trying to wear you down." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "What do we do?" "We fight," Ava said simply. "We compile everything. Messages, call logs, visitation violations, evidence of instability, and we prove she's lying." That's exactly what we did. I spent days gathering every shred of evidence I could. And then, just when I thought we had everything, there was another knock on my door. It was Danielle. Again. And this time she wasn't empty-handed. "I thought you'd want to see this," she said, stepping inside and handing me a thick folder. Inside were messages between Emily and Ryan, plans to manipulate the court, strategies to flip the narrative, and even suggestions about what to tell the kids to make me look like the villain. "She's been trying to drag Ryan back into this mess," Danielle said. "But he's done. He sent me everything and told me to do what I wanted with it." I stared at the evidence, stunned. "This is incredible. Thank you." "Just make sure she doesn't get away with it," Danielle said before leaving. Armed with this new information, Ava built an ironclad case. The custody hearing was set for 2 weeks later. The courtroom was tense that day. Emily arrived with her usual confidence, dressed like she was auditioning for a movie about perfect mothers. But as the evidence piled up, her facade started to crack. Ava walked the judge through every detail: the visitation violations, the manipulative social media posts, the messages with Ryan, and Danielle's testimony. By the time Emily's lawyer had the floor, their arguments were paper-thin. When it was Emily's turn to speak, she fell back on the same tired performance. Tears, self-pity, accusations. But the evidence crushed every word. The judge's ruling was swift and final. Emily's appeal was denied. Her visitation would remain supervised. And, in a humiliating blow, she was ordered to pay part of my legal fees for wasting the court's time. Outside the courthouse, she cornered me in the parking lot, fury etched into her face. "You'll regret this," she spat. "No," I said calmly. "I regret ever trusting you. But I'll never regret protecting my children." And with that, I walked away. For the first time in years, life finally stayed quiet. Emily didn't show up at games. She stopped posting online. Even the angry texts slowed to a trickle. It was as if the fight had finally gone out of her. The kids and I built a new normal, one that was ours and ours alone. There were Sunday hikes, birthday parties without tension, and dinners where laughter filled the room instead of silence. One evening, my oldest son joined me on the porch as the sun set behind the neighborhood. "Dad," he said softly, "I like how things are now." "Me too," I replied, pulling him close. "And they're only going to get better." For the first time, I believed it. The storm had passed. The house was still standing. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Emily's betrayal hadn't destroyed me. It had rebuilt me. It had shown me how strong I was, how deeply I could love, and how fiercely I would fight for what mattered most. Life wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The weeks that followed were almost eerily peaceful. It was as if a storm that had raged for years had suddenly gone silent. The kids adjusted to our new reality far better than I could have hoped. They were thriving, laughing more, sleeping better, opening up to me in ways they never had before. Even their teachers noticed the difference, sending home notes about improved focus and happier moods. I was thriving too. The constant anxiety that had once ruled my life was gone. I started running again, joined a local book club, and even spent weekends taking the kids to the lakeside park just outside of town. Something Emily had always complained was a waste of time. Our house felt like a home again, not a war zone. But deep down, I knew Emily. She wasn't someone who vanished quietly. And silence in her world was never a sign of surrender. It was a sign that she was regrouping. Sure enough, the texts began again. They were sporadic at first, but they carried a venom I hadn't seen before. "You've poisoned them against me. You stole everything from me, and you'll pay for it. They'll hate you when they're older." I ignored them, forwarding each message to Ava and keeping meticulous records. I wasn't going to be baited. I had learned that lesson the hard way. Then one rainy Wednesday morning, I received a call from Danielle. "Mark," she said cautiously, "I think you should know. Emily's been trying to contact Ryan again." I sighed. What does she want this time? "She's telling him that you've turned the kids against her, that you're ruining her life, that he's the only one who understands. He's not responding, but she's trying to rope him back in." I thanked her and hung up, but I couldn't shake the sinking feeling in my stomach. Emily was unraveling, and desperate people do desperate things. I didn't have to wait long to see just how desperate she had become. It started at the kids' school. One afternoon, as I was picking them up, I saw Emily's car parked across the street. She wasn't supposed to be there. The visitation agreement was clear. But there she was, sunglasses on, watching us. I felt my pulse quicken. I called Ava immediately. "Document it," she said. "Don't engage. Just record the date, time, and location." A few days later, she showed up again, this time at our local grocery store. She pretended it was a coincidence, but I knew better. And then finally, she crossed a line. It was a Saturday morning, and the kids had a soccer game. Emily wasn't allowed to attend, not without prior arrangement, but as we arrived, there she was again, standing just beyond the field with that same fake smile. "Mommy!" my youngest shouted, running toward her. I quickly caught up and crouched down beside him. "Hey, buddy, remember what we talked about? Mommy has to follow the rules, too." Emily's smile tightened. "I'm just here to watch my kids play. That's not against the law, is it?" Before I could respond, Alex, one of the other parents, stepped forward. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's fine," Emily said quickly. "Good," Alex said firmly. "Let's keep it that way." She stayed for the rest of the game but kept her distance. Afterward, she tried to walk with us to the car. "Emily, you need to leave," I said. "You can't keep them from me forever," she hissed. "I'm not," I replied calmly. "But if you break the rules again, you won't see them at all." Her glare was pure hatred, but she turned and walked away. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, my youngest asked a question that nearly broke me. "Why doesn't Mommy live here anymore?" I swallowed hard. "Sometimes grown-ups don't get along," I said softly. "But Mommy and I both love you very much. That will never change." He nodded, accepting the answer. But after I turned off the light, I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the closed door. Emily had forced me into a role I never expected to play, both mother and father, protector and provider. It was exhausting, but I'd do it 1,000 times over for them. Then, just as things began to calm down again, Emily launched her most audacious move yet. Ava called me one Monday morning. "Mark," she said, "Emily's filed another motion, this time for full custody." I almost laughed. "Full custody? Again?" "She's alleging parental alienation," Ava explained. "She claims you're turning the children against her. It's a weak case, but we'll need to prepare." So I did. I spent days combing through text messages, call logs, emails, and school reports, anything that showed the truth, that I was providing a stable, loving home, and that Emily's erratic behavior was her own doing. Then, one evening, there was a knock at my door. It was Danielle again, holding a folder. "I thought you should have this," she said, stepping inside. Inside were screenshots of messages between Emily and Ryan. They weren't just about rekindling their affair. They were about manipulating the legal system. They plotted how to paint me as an unfit father, how to control the narrative, even how to coach the kids into saying certain things. "She's trying to pull him back into this," Danielle said. "But he's finally had enough. He sent me these and told me to do whatever I wanted." "This is a game changer," I said, flipping through the pages. "Then use it," Danielle said simply. With this new evidence, Ava built an airtight response. When the hearing date arrived, Emily showed up in court with her usual smug confidence. But it evaporated as soon as Ava began laying out the evidence. We showed the messages, the visitation violations, the manipulative posts, and Danielle's testimony. One by one, every lie Emily had told crumbled under the weight of documented proof. When it was Emily's turn to speak, she fell back on her familiar routine: tears, excuses, accusations. But none of it mattered. The judge saw through her. The ruling was swift and final. Her appeal was denied. The custody arrangement would remain as it was. And as a final humiliation, Emily was ordered to pay part of my legal fees for wasting the court's time. Outside the courthouse, she turned to me, her face twisted with fury. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "I regret ever trusting you. But I'll never regret protecting my children." And with that, I walked away. The next few weeks were the most peaceful I'd had in years. Emily didn't show up at the kids' events. She didn't post anything online. She didn't even text. It was as if the fight had finally drained out of her. The kids and I settled into a new rhythm, one that was quiet, stable, and full of laughter. One night, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, my oldest joined me. "Dad," he said softly, "things feel better now." "Yeah," I said, ruffling his hair. "They do." And they were. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. But even as I savored that peace, I knew Emily's story wasn't finished. Women like her don't simply disappear. They linger like ghosts, haunting the edges of your life, waiting for a chance to claw their way back in. And I was ready. Whatever came next, I wasn't afraid anymore. I had the truth, I had the law, and most importantly, I had my kids. For a few precious months, life stayed calm, almost suspiciously so. The kids were thriving in ways I hadn't seen in years. They laughed freely, made new friends, and seemed lighter, as if the tension that once clung to our home had finally lifted. And for the first time since the nightmare began, I felt truly present. I wasn't living in reaction to Emily anymore. I was building something new. But deep down, I knew that silence was temporary. People like Emily don't vanish. They regroup. They wait. And then, when you least expect it, they strike again. It started with subtle things. A comment left under one of my social media posts, vague enough to avoid legal trouble, but pointed enough that I knew it was her. Then came messages through mutual acquaintances. "Emily's been talking about how much she misses the kids," or "she says she's changed." I ignored them. I'd learned that any response, even silence wrapped in anger, was fuel to her. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from the kids' school. "Mr. Hale," the principal said carefully, "Emily showed up today without notice. She asked to speak with your son and daughter. We reminded her about the custody agreement and turned her away, but I thought you should know." The pit that formed in my stomach was cold and deep. She was testing boundaries again, and if there's one thing I'd learned, it's that a test ignored becomes an invitation. I called Ava immediately. "We need to document this," she said, "and we may want to request a formal warning from the court if it happens again." A week later, it did. This time she showed up at the kids' soccer practice, standing just beyond the fence with sunglasses and that infuriating, performative smile. The kids noticed, of course. My youngest waved enthusiastically, while my oldest froze. I walked over calmly. "Emily," I said evenly, "you know you're not supposed to be here." "I'm just watching my kids play," she said sweetly, her tone dripping with mock innocence. "That's not against the law." "Showing up unannounced is a violation of the court order," I replied. "You're not helping your case." "Maybe the court's wrong," she snapped. "Maybe they'll see that I'm not giving up on my children." "You're not fighting for them," I said, my voice low and steady. "You're using them as weapons. There's a difference." Her smile faltered for the briefest moment before she turned and walked away. But the damage was done. My kids were upset, confused, and angry. That night, as I tucked them into bed, my youngest asked, "Why doesn't Mommy listen to the rules?" I swallowed hard. "Sometimes," I said gently. "People don't like rules when they don't get their way, but we have to trust the rules, okay? They're there to keep us safe." He nodded slowly, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. Emily's actions weren't hurting me anymore. They were hurting them. And that was something I would never forgive. A few weeks later, I received a notice from the court. Emily had filed another motion. This time, she claimed that I was actively sabotaging her relationship with the children and fostering a hostile environment. It was the same tired narrative dressed in new language. Ava barely batted an eye. "She's trying to drain you," she said. "But this will backfire. We'll counter with everything. The school incident, the soccer incident, the texts, the messages. And I'm going to request a psychological evaluation as part of this motion." "Will the court go for that?" I asked. "With her track record?" Ava smirked. "Absolutely." And they did. The evaluation was extensive: interviews with the kids, interviews with me, home visits, and even a formal assessment of Emily. I wasn't worried. The truth was on my side. And the results reflected that. The report concluded that I provided a stable, nurturing environment, while Emily's behavior demonstrated a pattern of manipulation and emotional instability. It was a devastating blow to her case. At the next hearing, Ava presented the report alongside the mountain of evidence we'd collected. The judge was visibly unimpressed with Emily's antics. "Mrs. Hale," she said sternly, "you have repeatedly violated the terms of this court's orders. Your actions demonstrate a concerning disregard for the well-being of your children. This court will not tolerate further attempts to undermine their stability." The ruling was swift and brutal. Emily's visitation rights were reduced to supervised visits only, with a court-appointed monitor present. Any further violations would result in a suspension of contact altogether. Emily's face went pale. For the first time, I saw real fear behind her eyes. Outside the courthouse, she confronted me one last time. "You think you've won?" she spat, her voice shaking. "This isn't over, Mark. It's never over." I looked at her calmly. "It's over for me," I said. "You can keep fighting shadows if you want. I'm done." And I meant it. From that day forward, Emily faded from our lives in a way she never had before. The supervised visits became sporadic, at first because she didn't like being watched, then because she started missing them altogether. The texts slowed, then stopped. The social media rants disappeared. It was as if, without control, she had no reason to exist. And slowly, the wound she left behind began to heal. The kids blossomed. They stopped asking when Mommy was coming. They stopped watching the door at night. They stopped trying to make sense of the chaos she had created. Instead, they focused on their friends, their hobbies, their dreams. I did too. I poured myself into work, took on new projects, and even started traveling again, something I hadn't done in years. I built a life that wasn't defined by betrayal or bitterness. It was built on love, stability, and quiet joy. One evening, As we sat on the back porch watching fireflies blink against the darkening sky, my oldest son turned to me and said, "Dad, I think we're happy now." I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Yeah," I said softly. "I think we are." It struck me then, all the pain, all the battles, all the sleepless nights, they had led to this moment, to a home filled with laughter, to children who felt safe, to a life that was finally mine. Emily's shadow would always linger at the edges of our story. But that's all it was now, a shadow. It couldn't hurt us anymore. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was free. Years passed, slowly at first, then all at once. Seasons changed. The kids grew taller. Their interests shifted from cartoons to sports, from picture books to novels. Life settled into a rhythm so ordinary, so beautifully mundane, that sometimes I had to remind myself how far we'd come to get here. The house was different now. The air wasn't thick with tension. The walls didn't feel like they were listening. Laughter echoed off the kitchen tiles again, the kind of laughter that comes from safety, not nervousness. We had traditions: pizza Fridays, road trips in the summer, board game nights that always ended in ridiculous arguments about who cheated. There were mornings filled with the smell of pancakes and evenings spent under blankets watching old movies. And through it all, Emily was gone. Oh, she still existed somewhere out there. I'd get the occasional legal update, a missed supervised visit, a failure to comply with the payment order, a relocation notice from her attorney. But she had faded into the periphery of our lives, a ghost we no longer feared. The woman who once had complete control over our world was now a name that barely came up in conversation. At first, I thought the kids would ask about her more, but as time passed, they stopped. The younger one still drew her a Mother's Day card every year, which I dutifully mailed, but there were no tears, no longing questions. My oldest rarely spoke of her at all. Children, I learned, are resilient. They understand more than we think, and they heal faster than adults do. As for me, I rebuilt. I threw myself into my career, earning promotions I'd once dreamed of but never chased. I started traveling again. Something Emily always complained was irresponsible. I even bought a small cabin by the lake 2 hours north, a place where the kids and I could escape for weekends, hike, fish, and build bonfires under the stars. It became our sanctuary. It took time, but eventually, I opened my heart again too. It started unexpectedly. A conversation with a fellow parent at a school fundraiser turned into coffee, then dinner, then something deeper. Her name was Clara. She was patient, gentle, and strong in ways that didn't demand attention. She knew my story, not just the headlines, but the messy details, and didn't flinch from them. She never tried to fix me. She just listened, and in that quiet, I found something I thought I'd lost forever: peace. The kids loved her. They were cautious at first, but Clara never pushed. She earned their trust slowly, showing up to games, helping with homework, laughing at their terrible jokes. One night, my youngest called her family without thinking, and the word stuck. I'll never forget the first time I realized I was truly free. We were sitting around a fire pit at the lake cabin, Clara, the kids, and I, roasting marshmallows under a sky so full of stars it looked like it might crack open. My daughter was telling a story about school, my son was arguing about who got the bigger marshmallow, and Clara was laughing softly beside me, and I just breathed. No anger, no bitterness, no ghosts, just warmth, just love. In that moment I realized that Emily's betrayal, as devastating as it had been, hadn't ruined me. It had rebuilt me. It had stripped my life down to its foundations and forced me to rebuild it brick by brick, stronger and steadier than before. It taught me the value of boundaries, the power of resilience, and the importance of choosing peace over chaos. I don't hate her anymore. I don't forgive her either. Some things don't deserve forgiveness. But I understand her now. She was broken in ways I could never fix, driven by needs I could never satisfy. And in trying to hold on to her, I had almost broken myself too. But I didn't. I survived. I rebuilt. I thrived. One evening, years later, I received a letter from her lawyer. It was short and formal. Emily had moved overseas, remarried, and wanted to relinquish her visitation rights. I stared at the page for a long time before setting it down. I felt nothing. No anger, no joy, no vindication. Just closure. The next weekend we went back to the lake cabin. The kids were teenagers now, taller, louder, full of their own dreams. Clara and I sat on the porch with mugs of coffee, watching them skip rocks across the water. "Do you ever think about her?" Clara asked quietly. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But not the way I used to. She's just part of the story. A chapter that's closed." Clara nodded and leaned her head on my shoulder. "Then maybe it's time to stop rereading it." I smiled. "Yeah, I think it is." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the lake in gold and violet. My son shouted something about catching a fish. My daughter rolled her eyes. Clara laughed, and for the first time, I truly understood what it meant to move on. This wasn't the ending I had once imagined. But it was so much better. It was peace. It was freedom. It was a life I built, not from what was taken from me, but from everything I still had. And in the end, that was enough.